Perfect. Good afternoon. I'm going to have to switch to English. I was just chatting in French a little bit. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. So I'm Redwan. I was elected the executive director of the EA about 6 months ago. And today I'm going to talk a little bit with you to highlight a little bit what we've been doing for a few months, what we think we should need to do for the Ethereum ecosystem to win the enterprise adoption. And also, I want to have some time for some question and conversation because I think it's easier to interact in those presentations. So I'll start first actually by the thesis. So you know what I'm going to talk and what the end goal is here. We think like right now, to win the enterprise adoption, we need to show as a united front, especially around the L2s, and to do that work collectively. And I'm going to walk you through why. So first, I want to maybe clarify or give a little bit of overview of the Ethereum ecosystem and how different entities work together. So you have first like some non-profit organization. Those are going to be the Ethereum Foundation or the EA. I'm actually a trade organization, but not going to go in technicalities in here. Then you have some different commercial entities. And here you see, for instance, Etherealize, a product company focused on Ethereum. You have Lido doing all the staking. You have also Consensus that do a lot of multiple things. All of those actually are all members of the EA. So we already work all together. And then you have also like the L2s that provide that infrastructure, the scalability. And I think a good way to maybe summarize, you have Ethereum Foundation, you're the builders, really like the long-term vision. What is going to be the structure of Ethereum and what we need to do to make that system like the new financial backbone. Then EA, think about like more the diplomacy, like how we can go in different rooms, connecting with different entities. And then the commercial entities, they're the fighters. They're the one that's going to go sign some contract, make some market, get some users, do really like the artwork of like selling. And so all of us, we work together to make Ethereum win. I think we already know, but yes, the public chain, the private chain experiment in the TradFi hasn't never take off. And so now we know for a fact that they're going to progressively move to public infrastructure. And here, for instance, like there's some quotes that I got from DTCC. Who knows here who is DTCC? Raise your hand. 4 people, okay. So DTCC is the biggest clearinghouse in the world. That's a company that clears about $2 quadrillion of securities per year. And they hold $100 trillion of securities in their books. So that's a massive financial institution that actually like is a backbone of the financial world. And so DTCC recently released like an app chain. And their global head was saying, you know, like, our collateral app chain allows assets to be issued on any network, private or public. And actually, about 2 hours ago, my friend Zach over there was giving a presentation of that product, which I highly recommend you to take a look. Then you have some people at Citibank, at Consensus. And what they're saying is like, well, if every time someone is selling me their network, I would not need to work anymore. Which is like, everyone is going one by one to go to financial institution to get their thing together. So we have a kind of fragmentation of the message. They're onboarding. Here is a little collection of like few headlines. I think if you haven't heard, you know, JP Morgan and SAP, they did a partnership to actually allow cross-border payment. If you've never heard about SAP, some numbers about like 85% of global commerce go through SAP at a certain point. And JP Morgan is the biggest bank in the world, and every day there is $10 trillion of money moving through their rails. And so they just created like they never mentioned blockchain, Web3 or anything, digital payment, and they did that at the Sapphire conference. We have, of course, like Stripe and Bridge, recently Robinhood and Arbitrum. And so like things are moving, you know, like the regulation also is bringing some clarity. Like this is really like the moment like we never had before. And a little bit of a step back and overview. Like we've seen like depending on how long you've been in crypto, we've seen like ecosystem grow and grow. And it's remarkable what we achieve in like less than 20 years. But if you look at the actually market, we're talking about replacing, like having the global finance all over the world. Like those are like estimates, but you see, for instance, like global money supply, $123 trillion. Right now, we tokenize 0.2% of that. So it's very small. And you see that little red dot in here? Well, this is the entire crypto market cap. So it's like everything, like Bitcoin, all of it, this is what it represents. So to give you a scale of like the pie that is accessible to us. But now, all in this room, we know like Ethereum is the best, more than 60% of stablecoin are on Ethereum, like 80%, 90% of real world assets. We have the best cryptography technology. EVM is the standard. When I go into rooms with the institution, like there is like it's no question, like you have to build on EVM. And so that's the reality. We have, of course, like the best uptime, all the stats we can talk about long time. But the thing is like that message, like I go to some floors and talk to some payment provider, like they clear billions per day. They're like big institution. They heard about Ethereum, but if you start to go like Arbitrum, like Superchain, TPS, like Sequencer, all of that, they don't know about this. And so then on top of that, we had like a messaging of like 80 different L2s and maybe more that go everyone pitching with their own maybe different language. That creates some confusion. It's a lot of noise. It's difficult for them to actually like grasp like, what is Ethereum, guys? Are you all together? Is this something different? How are you connected? And so that's where like there is a challenge for our community. And one of the key things that we witness is like we are under-investing in some big forum where actually big enterprise and TradFi are going. And so here is a list, for instance, like who has ever heard about Sibos? 1%. Sibos is the annual Swift conference that happened in Germany. Swift, it's actually the DAO of TradFi. It's like 11,000 members. And it's a messaging system that power like the global finance. When you want to make a payment, you're going to use Swift messaging. That conference here, this is all the bank executive. No one from Ethereum is here. But you have some guy from Solana and Ripple. Nasha, this is more like US-centric. It's the ACH payment conference, so it's like the equivalent of like SEPA for our European friends. 86 trillion a year. No one was, actually we went this year with the EA, but otherwise never been a presence over there. Ripple was here. The same with Sapphire. Sapphire, like the big SAP conference, all the CIO, the CTOs, all the commerce of the world, no one here. Like I showed up like just by myself and went around on the floor. The same from Singapore FinTech Week. All the other ecosystem, they go as a united front with a clear messaging, and they go and they invest like millions and millions of dollars. And so this is really, I think, like the slide speaks for itself. We need to be more present in this room and to show like Ethereum as a united front. So maybe a few words about like the difference between like crypto go-to-market and enterprise go-to-market. Because this is very different. On one side, you have some very long cycle. Like you talk to someone, it's going to come back 3 weeks after when they have talking to some different people. You have to sign an NDA, then there is some legal, everything is very long. The cycle is very long, but the rewards can be pretty high. Also, you need to have a clear messaging. Like if you go and just talk about like the same that you approach like your peers here at Ethereum, they're not going to understand anything, and your message is going to like land flat. Also, and the same in here, Ethereum is a very engineering-focused, community, and it's remarkable. That's how we've been able to create like that beautiful system. But you cannot go to enterprise and talk about technical things. When you're going to go deeper and you start signing the contract and talk with like the engineering team, yes, but that's not how you sell. However, this is a lot based like that's a major aspect of our sale when we pitch, in different startups. I worked for ChainSafe for 4 years before. I was leading their developer tooling program. So I know firsthand, like you talk about your tech, how your tech is good. That's not how it works in enterprise. You need to go really in value. How are you going to make some money? How are you going to integrate with me? And also, there is a lot of procedure. You know, working with big institution is going to require like a lot of things that the engineers in the audience are going to find pretty annoying. Because you're going to have some approval, you're going to need to go through a lot of different hoops. And one analogy I love to use is that if you build as a startup, you take a blank page, you can write whatever you want. It's your own story. But when you work with enterprise, you have to integrate a chapter inside a already existing story. They have their own paper, they use a different ink. You can use specific inks. You have to be sure about like a specific style in your writing. So that brings a lot of different complexity. And so what enterprise needs also, from the conversation I've been having the last couple of months, is really like simplification. Like a week ago, I was in New York at the MasterCard Linux Foundation Decentralized Trust Privacy. So it was like a closed private event with central banks, big institutions. And one of the key messages that came out is like, well, we love, for instance, like zero knowledge proof and those cryptographic technology, but this is very hard to understand. You know, we are like at the forefront of this, like the spearhead of innovation, and we need to actually bring that technology and explaining this to those institutions so they can embrace it. The social proofing is very important. When you sell to enterprise, your tech and all the things that matters a lot in Ethereum might not matter that much. Like, if you have an example working with Bloomberg, with Franklin Templeton, or doing a POC in different sandboxes, that's going to matter because they know that you've been working with people that they know also. The compliance. At the end, they want to, there is no like an evil, like big hands that decide to do different things. They're under regulation. They have some law. If they don't do it, they're going to lose their license. They're not going to be able to do business. So they want to be compliant, not because they don't believe in the ecosystem, but because they have to follow the rules for their business to continue working. So we need to be able to integrate that. There is definitely, you know, some conversation, and it's important also for us to sometime maybe make evolve that compliance, because we don't want to destroy the primitive of our systems. But that's another conversation. I'll go more into detail. And packaging, you know what we do. Making some clear offering like, hey, this is what it's going to look like. You have a POC, this is the different phases, then you can look at that. And then after, we can look at an implementation in production and the post-development support. Because I was talking to a central bank recently, and they were telling me like, well, yes, it's awesome, we've been building that, but the big challenge that we have is like, after the implementation, who's going to take care of this? Do I need to hire and train 10 engineers that are going to take care of that infrastructure? Is there some companies that can do that? Do we already have like some structured contract for this? Those are like some real questions that actually can slow down the adoption. And of course, they want to make money. And I know that sounds like very obvious, but if you keep that in mind, like how you can help them make money, that's the best question you can ask yourself. But now, what I learned from like the last few months, I went to SAP Sapphire, I went to some privacy workshop with MasterCard, some privacy workshop at JP Morgan. Also, we did like a lot of side events with EY on different, like at East Denver, at Consensus, also some in New York for DAS. And there is no doubt that the institution and big enterprise, they see Ethereum as the place for distribution, for building like the future. And it's obvious, it's sure for them, like everyone is saying that. And also like everything is accelerating with the regulation and all of this. We went to the NASHA conference, so I brought like Linear and Polygon, and we had like a panel where we presented like the different payment solution that they've been doing for institution. Jamal and Daniel are like some veterans in the payment industry, so I learned a lot about how it works behind the scene. But also I learned, you know, being on the floor and going from stands to stand, like doing some really standard like BD work, like, hey, here, I'm a crypto guy, Ethereum, what do you know? People, like they don't know that much. They know about Ethereum a little bit, but the gap in knowledge is very big. And we have so much opportunity in here. And also something I'm very happy, you know, for the first time at ECC during this conference, ERC 3643, which is like emerging as the real world asset standard from the industry, implemented like already in 4 different legal framework, about 35 billion of assets. They came to ECC and gave a presentation to present the work they're doing. Dennis, and also DTCC with their $100 trillion of assets. They came also for the first time in here. in our community to present the work and engage with us. And I think that's a pretty exciting success. But so now, what's your plan for the enterprise adoption in 2025 and 2026? So our proposal is to create like a L2 enterprise outreach program and having a united front, Ethereum base, at big enterprise forum. So that means like we're gonna align with the L2 around the messaging. So we can make sure like we all say the same thing and work from like one united voice. Crafting some Ethereum sales narrative together. Taking all the tier 1 L2s, what are the best use cases, and building some sales collateral together. And show up as one as those different enterprise forums. So the challenge for us is like if we don't coordinate now, people will do it for ourselves. And if we want to preserve the Ethereum ethos and make sure like we keep growing that beautiful piece of technology that is Ethereum in the whole ecosystem, we need to actually be in the room, influence institutional standard. And to do that, we need to be collectively as a group and unified front. It's not going to be like just 2 or 3 L2s that talk with Franklin Templeton, DTCC, JP Morgan, other financial institutions to discuss. We need to come as a united voice. Because I'm telling you, like the other, like if you Ripple, Solana, and those guys, they're investing millions of dollars. And they're like pushing. And yes, we have beautiful and best technology, but that's not enough. We need to really come together. And so that's my final take. You know, like Ethereum enterprise narrative, we need to build it together. And that will be my key message. And I think now I'm ready for question. Thank you very much. This is a calendar of like the different events that we put on the schedule. So there is also like here a BIS. It's the, sorry, there is a question or not? No, yeah. BIS is the internal, like a bank of inter-settlement. So they have an innovation hub that's gonna happen in September. There's a private event, closed doors, and we're gonna try to be present over here to represent Ethereum. And I think maybe I don't know if there is a question or if like, no, okay. CES, South by Southwest, you know, who was at East Denver? Ah, I think someone.
Great you are here. One question, how engaged are you in Europe? And are you interested in probably expanding the footprint of EAA in Europe? And
yeah, so
can we participate?
Yeah, I'm French, but I'm based in New York. But definitely, you know, like the main of our focus is like Europe and the US. So expanding in Europe is part of like what we want to do. And sorry? Yeah, well, with Mika and all of this, like it's really also, yeah, that's what I heard too. Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question in terms of what you're marketing. Because so I work on an Ethereum client team, and you know, to some extent, we're asking the question as a software provider, how do we address the enterprise market? Because you know, okay, you're selling the ecosystem, but in the end, there ought to be opportunities for us as software providers delivering, you know, into these institutions, and effectively, you know, for our long-term survival, we're a kind of independent business. You know, selling to enterprises is probably an alternate revenue source for us than, you know, going to all the foundations and effectively saying, give us a grant. And the question is like, how do we join that marketing process effectively?
A very good question, and I was talking to my friend at Lowstar recently about that. So I think you have my contact. We can keep in touch, and it's definitely something also like the more we're gonna work with institution in implementing. Like they not always, you know, do their own client implementation, but I think, you know, with the the clarity around staking and stablecoin, this is going to change. And so they might start to be interested, say, hey, I want to run my own client, which one I'm going to use. And then from here, talking to all the different, bringing all the different protocol client teams in front of those institutions to discuss about those needs is definitely something like also I would love to do. Yeah, it's absolutely interesting. And for instance, like the staking is that like why they couldn't do staking for a long time is because it was not allowed to have that on their books. Like, what do I do when I get some rewards and everything? But this is going to change, so that's probably going to also open the gate for a lot of things, because either they go with third parties, and I have to cut. Thank you very much for your attention, guys.